This is our guest speaker today. He is Sumant Gupta. He's also my uncle, and he was trading at Lehman Brothers during the financial crisis up until the day Lehman went bankrupt. And that was one of the bigger bankruptcies of the crisis, if not the biggest, along with Bear Stearns. So he has a lot of experience. Last week we were talking about the internet bubble. We had the guy who took his company public during the internet bubble come and speak. So you'll get another view on another bubble. In this case, the housing bubble of 0809. And so with that, take it away.
All right. Hi, guys. So Rohan has asked me to talk a little bit about what it was like to be in the bubble and what happened afterwards. I have, just as a little bit of background, I studied in India as an engineer, and after that I joined the world of finance. I worked in Asia for a while, and then I've been working in New York since then. I've been through 2 financial crises and 3 bankrupt companies, so I have a little bit of experience in what could go wrong.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is maybe just let Rohan ask the questions. I still trade bonds for a living, fixed income securities. I trade derivatives, options, complex derivatives in New York. And I work for Lehman, I work for Barclays, and right now for TD Bank. So Rohan, why don't you start with the questions and then we go from there?
Yeah, sure. So my first question is, what was the general feeling on Wall Street, and more specifically, what was the feeling at Lehman Brothers during your time there, during the years prior to 2008, in the run up to the bubble?
Well, the feeling was great. Lehman Brothers was aiming to be a top 3, top 4 bulge bracket bank, and it was succeeding. It had a checkered past before this, but things were coming together. Stock price was going up. We were doing a lot of very good business with clients. The business environment and Lehman's own business structure itself was kicking in on all gears, and it was being reflected in the stock, in the business sphere, the number of clients we were touching. So it felt great. We were bullish on pretty much every aspect, every division, and our motto was take more risk, get more business done, facilitate movement of risk with our clients at that time.
Okay, so it just is an overall, just generally optimistic feeling in the years up to the bubble, right?
Absolutely. Everybody was feeling good about being there, and there was no, we were on the upswing.
Okay, so eventually, as bubbles go, it's always optimism, and then the bubble pops. So when did you realize that what was happening was a bubble?
You realize that only after it pops, which is in a way into the final days of the crisis. So what happened with Bear Stearns was JP Morgan bought them. So there was this moral hazard, as they called it, where, okay, it's a bubble, but you have a backstop bid, somebody buys it. In the case of Lehman Brothers, they tried to put a consortium together, but it did not happen. Till the last day, most employees felt that, some solution will come, we won't go bankrupt. That has never happened, and it won't happen. So it's only after that, when the day they declared bankruptcy, you realize, oh my God, this is as real as it's going to get. And into the crisis also, there were enough groups which were adding risk rather than cutting risk. So if you liked a security at $100, you got to love it at 50, and then at 20, load the boat, kind of thing, right? So that.
Yeah.
So it's only after it pops that you realize that, like you guys must have seen that in the internet bubble talk also. It's only afterwards you say, what was I doing? What was I thinking?
Right. So just after it, then that's when you realize that it was a bubble, and that the housing market wasn't sustainable at that point, right? The mortgage, like all the loans and everything.
Yes, yes. So it's only after that you start coming out with all these subprime mortgage stories and people leveraging, people who earn $1, but they own assets worth $10 or $15. The banks at that point of time were rumored to have, uh, not just 10 or 15 times leverage, but 90 to 100 times leverage. So the banks were a reflection of what some of the consumers were going through because they thought prices would only go up and you can only make money in this market.
Right. So in your role so my next question is, you were trading bonds at Lehman and you still trade bonds. So how did the bubble what was the bubble's impact on your role with dealing with trading bonds and more specifically government bonds?
So this was a period of very, very high volatility, like unprecedented volatility. So my desk, which was an options trading desk, volatility trading desk, had its record year that year. And even post, there was enough volatility where people were sifting through the ashes, trying to figure out where things were going to land. It was a good time to trade these assets. Specifically, government bonds were the safest bonds out there. So they were doing really well. Interest rates were falling. All you had to do was just buy, and literally every day interest rates would go down. So it was a period of high volatility, trending markets, which generally is good for anybody who's in the market who can get onto that trade. So following it was good. One thing that did happen was because Wall Street generally shrank during that time, there were a lot of people out of jobs. So for the number of clients, a lot of banks disappeared. And that was a very harsh reality in New York and across the country, I guess, where there were a number of people. Lehman Brothers itself had 25,000 employees. And a large number of these employees had to look for jobs. And when unemployment goes up, the Fed starts cutting interest rates and all these things start feeding into each other. It's kind of a domino effect. So business was good, but the business environment for people in general, especially people who had been laid off, was not very good.
Okay. I just wanted to point out, so he said just now that the interest rates were falling, but when you're dealing with bonds, there's a way, if the interest rate on a bond decreases, the value of that bond actually increases. It's an inverse relationship between the bond's interest rate, or as most people call it, the bond's yield, and then the actual value of the bond as well. So just putting that out there. And then, so how did you manage the bubble? How did you cope or manage with the bubble after Lehman went bankrupt?
Well, in my specific case, my group and most of the fixed income division at Lehman Brothers in New York was bought by Barclays Bank. So I kind of seamlessly moved into another basically a trading seat at Barclays and talking to a bulk of the same customers. And it did not affect me that much at that point of time. What it did do is affect a number of my colleagues who, if there was redundancies, Barclays had their own desk and you have another Lehman desk coming in. So you get this politics of mergers, which can be pretty difficult and to maneuver. But as far as business itself is concerned, because it was so volatile, during these times, people are willing to pay any price to get out, to reduce their risk. So as a dealer in the market, it's a good time for you. Being a central counterpart, you can buy low, sell high, without taking on a lot of risk.
So it was a rather smooth transition for you because you just got picked up by another bank, basically, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So my next question might be a bit more general, but how did finance change after the bubble? Both politically and just what Wall Street sort of did together, what they collectively decided.
Well, the biggest change was a lot of regulation came in. And with Dodd-Frank, a number of rules were put in, which can be pretty onerous uh, for banks because they were used to a lot more freewheeling environment before. So as a result, the amount of risk banks could take came down substantially. A lot of monitoring by the Fed, by regulatory agencies came into place. What also has happened over this time is the government has gone after rogue, what they call rogue traders or rogue uh, folks who have been seen to manipulating the market or cheating customers, put them in jail. So compliance wise, Wall Street employees are now far, far, far more aware and careful about what is right, what is wrong. So the environment has changed for the better. While there's more regulation, there's less risk in the system for another crisis like this to happen. There are fewer banks around, so the industry itself has kind of shrunk a little bit from before. There are fewer clients involved because earlier there were a number of small banks which went bankrupt, and they were absorbed by larger banks. So you have banks like Citi, JP Morgan, they have become much, much bigger than before. And the smaller players are few and far in between. So the industry is dominated by bigger players now.
Right. And we refer to them as like the big banks, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So this is more of a personal question. So what is the most meaningful lesson you personally learned from the crisis?
Well, I would say this is something Warren Buffett has said many times, and that it rings true during times like these. And his point has been: be very well diversified, don't be very leveraged. Right. So when things look too good to be true, they are too good to be true, more likely than not. And well, in my specific case, like if you're living in New York, real estate is really expensive. You guys in California know this, and it feels like prices can just keep going up, and there's no end in sight. And you kind of tend to leverage. So if your kids are in private school, you have a home in the Hamptons, you have expensive cars. That you can easily lose sight. You believe that the good times will always last, and that usually is not the case. So that's one thing to remember. The other is diversification of assets, right? So a lot of people who work for Lehman Brothers and other Wall Street banks had a lot of their net worth invested in the bank itself, in the same bank, because they'd worked there for 25 years. They said, hey, things have been so good for 25 years, they'll continue to be so. And these guys not only lost their careers, their jobs, but also a lot of their savings. So I would say these are two of the main lessons, in my opinion.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to open it up to some audience questions. Any questions? If not, I have a couple more questions to ask. So right now, in today's market, what sector or industry, what do you feel is the most overvalued or in bubble territory right now?
Okay, so that is $1 million question, which a lot of people are asking, and there is no good answer to it. So the stock market has been going up relentlessly since the crisis, right? It's broken all records, and that's the biggest question out there: whether is the stock market overvalued? And the fact that so many people are questioning it, and yet it stays where it is, right? They're drawing parallels to the financial crisis, means that it's probably not overvalued. There are a lot of things which are going right. With regulations, the leverage, the risk in the system has been reduced. Interest rates are low. Volatility, uncertainty in the business environment is low. The government has become more business friendly. So, in short, I would say there's no obvious bubble right now to me.
Okay. And then, so for some of the people who don't know what Dodd-Frank is and like its impact on finance, I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but could you just go in more detail about what Dodd-Frank is and how it really just changed the field of finance?
Sure. So Dodd-Frank put in regulations to make the operations of the financial sector more transparent and more controllable, I guess, by the Fed, so that oversight, the Fed is not blindsided by excessive risk in the system. So a very simple example would be what the